So as you can see, this little animation right here, this is what we are going to be creating. So not only am I going to show you how to get it to bounce like this with the little shine on it, and how to keep it nice and rigid in its 8-bit look. So first we're going to create the actual heart with the new Pixel Boy brush set, and then we're going to upscale it to be a higher resolution, and then we're going to animate it. And this is like super easy. I'll take you through every step, and then you'll be able to create something just like this all by yourself. So we'll stop that animation. We'll go to gallery, and first we're going to create a new project. And we're going to start by creating a new canvas up here in the top right. And we will go with 25 by 25 pixels. So this is a very tiny canvas. You could leave DPI at 300. As you can see, we have maximum layers of 400, which is amazing, but we're only going to use one, so it doesn't really matter. Color profile we'll leave on sRGB. Time-lapse settings don't matter. Canvas properties, background color. I like to take this to like a grayish color so it doesn't hurt my eyes. And then you can title this 25 by 25 pixel. That way, once you create it, it will be saved here in your new canvases right here. And then you can use it any other time you need. As you see, I have all these other ones. If you don't have any of these canvases set up, make sure to check out the Procreate 101 lesson about Canvas, because I give you all the information to set all these up, and it's a total time saver once you have all of your canvases pre-set up. So we have our 25 by 25, and we'll jump right into that. First off, what we're going to do is we're going to open up the Pixel Boy brush set. If you don't have these, they're free download. You could find them in the freebies section. So on the app, if you press the 3 bars for menu, and then the drop down will say freebies, click on that, and then you'll find the Pixel Boy brush set. Moving forward, what we have is our Pixel Boy brush set, and we're going to start with the Pixel Boy, which is a 1 pixel brush. And it does go up because we have these sizes over here on the right. We have them set. The bottom one is saved to 1 pixel, and then it goes upwards from there to different increments. But we're just going to start with the 1 pixel. We're going to pick a black color, and then we are going to stamp down a couple pixels. So upon first tapping the screen, you see that it created this giant pixel, which is actually 4 pixels in one. And the reason for that is if you tap perfectly in between the grid, it will lay down either 2 or 4 pixels. But if you tap perfectly in the center of a pixel, then it will leave just 1 pixel. And it sounds confusing, but it's much easier once we turn the grid on. So if we come over to Actions, Canvas, and then Drawing Guide, turn that on, edit the drawing guide, and now we see we have grid size here in the bottom right. This grid size we can set to be exactly 1-to-1 on the pixels for the screen. So if we zoom in here and we see our pixel, you can see that the grid is not lined up perfectly with the grid, or with the pixels. So we can adjust this grid size at the bottom. 1 pixel should be fine, and it looks like from 0 to 1 it stays the same. That's great. We can just leave it at 0 then. But some canvases, maybe if you're doing like 100 pixels by 100 pixels, you'll have to fine tune this a little bit more. Then we take our dot here in the center. By tapping on it, we can either reset it or move it around. And since the canvas is not an even number of pixels, since we used 25, we're going to have to drag this dot over a little bit. So I'm going to drag it over to line up perfectly with my pixel, just like that. And now this is where the magic happens. So save that, press done. And now we know exactly where we're tapping. So if we tap directly in 1 pixel, we can see that it nails it right on the head. But if you tap directly in a place where the 4 corners meet, we'll get a giant pixel. So that's another cool thing about using the pixel grid, is that you can have a lot more control over how you're laying down your pixels. Makes it really easy. So we'll clear the screen by using 3 fingers, swiping back and forth to scrub the screen. And we're going to pick a different color. I'm going to pick a purple, but you can choose whatever color you want. And let's create a heart. So if we wanted to, we could use the symmetry tool and have it mirror perfectly. But since we moved our grid a little bit off center, we won't be able to see it mirror with the pixel grid at the same time, because when you switch to a symmetry grid, it cuts the canvas in half and you won't be able to see each pixel. So we'll leave it like this for now, and then we'll just use our eyes to measure. So for our heart, we're just gonna draw a heart. Obviously, it's not gonna look great right off the bat, but we could use that going forward. So we got a rough idea of like where our heart's gonna be laid out. And then you can, now that we have our pixel boy here, you can tap and hold on the eraser, and now we moved our pixel boy right onto our eraser as well. So here we'll make sure we're set at 1 pixel, and now we can erase some of these pixels and try to even it up. So right now I'm looking that we have, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the top there. And so we're just matching the opposite side, making sure we also have 4. Then you can see it steps down 1 and 2. And so we'll match that to the other side. Then we'll just keep on doing this and deciding which pixels we want to keep and which pixels we want to get rid of. It's a little bit off center. We have 3 on the top, 1 on the bottom. And we'll keep trying to line this up to make it look good. And this will be trial and error until you get the kind of heart that you want. There's no one way to do it, but you'll know when you get it. So we're just going to keep carving this back, removing pixels, taking a look at what we've got. I think this looks pretty good. So we have 3 on the top. Let's switch to another color so I can show you what I'm doing. We have 3 on the top right here. We've got 3 on the side. We've got 1 in the center that matches the 1 in the bottom, and then it's mirrored on the other side. So this is going to make for like a really symmetrical, even looking pixel heart. If you have to, you can go on to Google and type in pixel heart, and you'll see a ton of images showing different ways that you can do a pixel heart. Some might be bigger, some might not have this little divot right here. It really just depends on the look that you want. But I really like this. I think this looks pretty good. You could also zoom out quite a bit and see how it retains its image. You usually want to do that with your artwork, with logos, with all kinds of stuff. So zooming out can help you a ton to see what your pixels look like. So now that we've got our heart, I think it looks pretty good just like this. We can take our background color and we'll turn that off so that we're left with this heart. Now we're going to export it because we can't animate this, because every time we move it, it's only going to snap 1 pixel at a time. So it'll be a very rigid animation. And although I want the heart to look like it's 8-bit, I want it to be animated in a higher resolution for a few reasons. 1, because I can add more detail. 2, because we can have it smoother with more frames. And 3, because when we share it on the internet, if you share a 25 pixel image, it will like stretch out and then be full of anti-aliasing, and it'll look absolutely horrible. So we're going to fix that in the next step. So step 1, create the heart. We have that done. The next step is going to be exporting. Come over here to your actions panel, hit share, and then come down here to PNG. We'll export it as a PNG, and we will save the image. Perfect. Export successful. So now to upscale it, we're going to create a new canvas. And this canvas is going to be 2100 by 2100 pixels. I guess you could do 2000. The reason why my brain goes to 2100 is because 2100 is the max amount of pixels that a Procreate brush can hold. So the grain source, the shape source, the textures used to create brushes, they get maxed out at 2100. So that's not really relevant to this, but you know, got to share that little fact. So we'll take our background color, darken it up, and this is where we import our pixel. This is the little trick that saves your pixel art from not being too small and pixelated. We're going to insert a photo using this button right here. And you can see our pixel right here, our little guy, he's really blurry. And when we import him, he's going to be even blurrier. So he shows up as this tiny little dot. You can see these handles are the corners of the image, which is just shrunken down to oblivion. And what we're going to do is press this blue fit to canvas down here on the bottom. Fit to canvas is going to stretch it out and make it look so bad. But this is the tricky part. We can make sure that we're set to uniform right here. And we'll shrink it down to fit inside our canvas. Center it. I think this looks great. Now, if we commit these changes, boom, you can see that it's snapped perfectly into our pixels that we had before. And the reason why it did that is because when we do fit to canvas, down here at the bottom right corner, it says nearest. Yours might say bilinear or bicubic. And bilinear and bicubic might work great when resizing other things in Procreate. But when you're taking something really small with perfect square pixels into a large canvas, if you use bilinear or a bicubic, you will get anti-aliasing, which is kind of like blurring of the edges to make the shape look smoother. But we don't want it smooth. We want it rigid. So we're going to use nearest neighbor, which kind of tells the program, hey, the nearest square pixel to this square pixel is what we want to fill in. So by using nearest neighbor, we get that perfect pixel snap. So let's shrink this down. You want to leave some space for the animation because we want it to bounce. And so we'll just keep note of that when we import this in here. Get it lined up into the center. These yellow lines will tell you when you're snapped onto the grid. And that setting is down here on the bottom left. That's magnetics and snapping. So once you have that set, nearest neighbor set, boom, we have our pixel heart. Super easy. A lot of people get that part wrong, and it will frustrate the heck out of them trying to get their pixels to stay square. Next, we're going to animate it, and this is the fun part. So what we're going to do is we're going to mess up our heart for a second here. We're going to take a orange dot, and we're going to put it right in the center of the heart. To do that, we're going to turn on our grid, and we're going to crank the grid size up. And we're going to put this dot right in the center. You can use any brush for this. I'm just going to use Timmy pencil because that's my brush. We're going to put this orange dot, we'll make it a little bit smaller, in the center. And this is going to be our reference point for the animation. You can see when we press transform on our heart, you can see that that's perfectly in the center. And that will help us guide our animation frames to make sure everything is lined up nicely. So take a second and create a new layer. If we want to keep things clean, we could rename this, but we're going to be duplicating them anyway, so it's going to be a mess. That's just how it is with Procreate Animation. This layer we can rename though. We'll call this Guides. This Guides is going to tell us where we can slide our frames for the animation. So for guides, you're going to want to use a regular pen, a brush of some sort, not the pixel one. And you're going to want to make a line between your grid from here to here. Now the size of this doesn't really matter. This is going to be the length that your heart travels. And this will end up going in the very center here. But for now, we'll leave it off to the side. And we're also going to switch the color of it. So I'm going to come over here to hue, saturation, brightness, and change the color and make it something different than orange and purple. So we'll do blue. And kind of take some of the saturation out and bring the brightness up. All right, now we have this. So I'm going to turn the canvas a little bit sideways to do this part. First, we're going to make, we got to select this color. First, we're going to make some marks on the end. This is going to be the end and the beginning of our animation. These lines signify frames. So the next one we're going to do is dead center. And I'm going to just guess that it's somewhere around right here. Let's see. Looks good to me. So these are your three main frames. You can call them keyframes. And this is where the heart will be at the center of the bounce. This is where the heart will be at the top of the bounce. And this is where the heart will be at the bottom of the bounce. And to make a smooth animation that bounces, you're going to want to divide it in this particular way. So from here, we're going to split it in half again. And we can change the color of this just slightly. We'll split it in half here. And we'll split it in half here. And that will make it a little bit more smooth because as the animation comes up, it'll hit this frame, and then bounce back down to this frame. And that'll make this smooth. And to make it even more smooth, we'll change our color a little bit more and split it in half again up here. And split it in half again down here. But not here. We're leaving these open because this will show the heart bouncing fast. So as the heart comes down, it'll come fast through here and then slow down and then bounce up and come fast through here, bounce back up and then slow down here and then keep bouncing back and forth like that. And to achieve that effect, we're just going to change the color again and we're going to cut it in half again. And once again, we'll change the color. And one last time, we'll cut it in half again. This means that the heart's just going to fly through the center. This will be the fast part where the heart flies past. Then as it gets up here, it'll slow down and kind of ricochet back down. Like that. And then it'll come fast through here, slow down. And the reason why it slows down is because there's more frames, which take up more time. And since it's going down and then bouncing back up, it's doubling these frames. So it hits 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back up 5, 6, 7. So just this small area down here has 7 frames. And then this whole area only has 3 frames. So you can see how it's going to slow down at the bottom, bounce quickly upwards, and then repeat at the top. So that's a cool trick that makes animation so much easier by just making a little chart like this to help yourself out. So this is where Procreate, takes home the gold, because when we turn on Animation Assist, we'll take our settings down to about 9 frames per second. We'll take onion skins down to 1 and onion skin opacity around 35%. So now we'll take our top guides layer, and right now Procreate thinks that this is a frame of our animation, so it'll like play between these two, which is not what we want. But we're gonna drag this over the center and make sure that our center line here lines up perfectly with this center dot. So now we have our grid lined up perfectly. And to test to see if we're gonna have enough space in our grid, we're gonna take our heart. Well, rewind. First, we're gonna do this. We're going to come down here to the very bottom in our frames down here. We're going to tap on this frame and we're going to set this to foreground. What this does is it lets our grid lay on top of our animation. So now when we move our heart around, it's going to leave our grid exactly where it is. And to test to see if we have enough space for this animation, we're going to take that orange dot and move him all the way to the top. And you see we have space here at the top still, and we'll check the bottom, and that's perfect. So we have our animation, we have our grid, everything's set up to rock and roll. And now is the easy part. That stuff was all the hard part, and that seems like the easy part, which is good. Now we're going to move on to the real easy part, and that is duplicating our heart and moving it along the grid. So we'll take our first frame and we'll take it all the way down to the very bottom like that. So what we're looking for is to have that orange dot lined up on our first marker. From here, we can tap on this frame at the bottom and choose duplicate. Now you press transform up here at the top, which will select your heart like this. And oops, you don't want to change the size of your heart. Now you want to just move it up to the next dot, just like that. And then repeat this all the way up. So we'll duplicate it again, transform it, move it up to the next dot, come down here, duplicate, transform to the next one, and so on and so forth. Now, while I do this, go ahead and let me know in the chat if you're still following along and if this all makes sense to you so far. And we are coming to the end of this. We'll duplicate again, move it up, and then duplicate it to the last one. So now that we have all of those frames in, let's go ahead and play our animation and see if it looks smooth and see if everything's working right. First, we want it to bounce up and then back down and then back up. So what we're going to do is, first of all, take our background layer and we'll set this to background so that we have this gray color as the background. And then we'll come into settings and we'll make sure that instead of loop, because if it's on a loop, it'll take you from the bottom straight to the top and then it'll start you back over at the bottom and it just will keep looping from the bottom to the top. But we want it to bounce back and forth like this. Boing, boing, boing. So we're going to take it to ping pong. Now that's pretty logical. It makes sense. We want it to ping and pong from the first to the last frame. So now that it's on ping pong, we can press play. Looking pretty cool. Let's go to our settings and let's increase the frames per second. I like 16. 16 looks pretty good. So now what we can do is turn off our guides layer at the top. And then we're going to go through each layer and we're going to paint over that little orange dot because we don't need it anymore. So grab yourself a pen, something with 100% opacity. You don't want something that's going to leave it transparent. So just grab like, I'm going to grab like chonky vector chonk, and then we'll select our color from the heart and just cover over that orange dot. Now you're going to go through each frame. You're going to cover over the orange dot. That was only there as a guide for us and nothing else. So now we have this little bouncing heart. And we can do some different things to it to make it look cooler. And there's a couple tricks in animation. There's squashing and stretching. So these things can help your animation. So if somebody moves their hand really fast, you might stretch their hand out to be twice the size in one of the frames. That way it looks like it's kind of trailing, like your eye is trying to keep up with it. Likewise, when you're bouncing a ball, as it hits the floor, you can smush it almost flat, even if the ball is not supposed to be really rubbery or anything. And you do that in 1 or 2 frames, and that helps give the illusion that it's actually bouncing or that it's moving quickly. It gives it a little bit more life. So to do those things, we can go to our first frame, and we can actually turn off uniform and put to freeform, and we can just transform it and smush it just a little bit. And then we go to our last frame and we smush it upwards just a little bit. And then maybe we take our second frame and smush it a little bit too. Our second frame and our second to last frame, we just do a little bit of smushing there. And then if we come here to our very middle frame, we can actually stretch him taller, a little bit taller up, a little bit taller down. And now when we play it, it gives it a little bit more life. And we can exaggerate these things as much as we want. We might want to take our bottom frames and really smush them. You can smush them a lot if you want. Like this. It almost looks like a pogo stick when we stretch it or when we flatten it a lot. So these are things that you can play around with, and you can maybe smush it even more so it almost like falls into the ground and then springs out. Or you can do no smushing at all if you want to keep it really simple. That's totally up to you. So I'm going to undo those last few because I don't want it squished so much. But that option is totally there, and it's really easy to do that. Let's unsmush that last one. And next we're going to add a little shine, a little detail onto the heart. And how we can do that is by putting all of our layers to alpha lock. Go through, tap on the layer, choose alpha lock, and we will do that on all of these. I believe you could turn on alpha lock by doing 2 fingers to the left. No, maybe 2 fingers to the right. Yeah. So 2 fingers on your layer to the right will alpha lock it. Boom. That's really fast and easy. And now we can take a brush, any brush that you want. I'm going to use Dream Paint's Misty because it's just like a nice soft brush. But you could use the airbrush or any soft brush that you want. And I'm going to take our purple color and I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. Just a little bit, and add maybe a little bit of red into it to make it pinker. And now we have that. So now that the layer is alpha locked, we can paint anywhere, and it's only going to paint on our heart. So what I'm going to do is pick a spot, maybe from this corner up here down to this corner down here. And I'm just going to do like a sweeping motion and get a little bit of highlight in there. I'm going to go through all the layers. And since the heart's down low on this one, the shine's going to hit the top of the heart. And as we move up, it'll slowly hit more and more and more of that heart. So I'm just going to brush in these highlights. You got to be careful not to add too much of this because then it might look a little funny when it animates. You could always go back with the eraser and adjust it however you want. So once we press play, now we have this little shine that's kind of bouncing around. And it does look a little bit out of place. So what we'll do is we'll grab our original purple color with the same soft brush and we'll just mute it out a little bit. We'll just paint over it just to soften it up a little bit. And it might look like I'm erasing it all. I don't know how much the live stream will capture this, but it's very subtle. And all it does is add a little bit of personality to it. And then from there, the next thing, so now you're done. You've got your heart, you've got your animation, and now you just need to be able to export it. So if you choose to, you can export it with the background. And maybe we want to tighten this up a little bit. For export, we can take our grid size and we'll shrink it down a little bit. And then we'll select all of our heart layers by swiping them over like this. Boom, boom, boom. Select all of them and then hit transform. And this bounding box shows you the entire size of your animation from top to bottom. And if we choose uniform and we shrink this down to about the center-ish. And now when we press play, you can see that our animation's more centered in the canvas and it just looks a little bit neater. We can turn our grid off now. And boom, here's your little animation. You can do this as complicated or as simple as you want. You could change each one of these frames. You could change the color slightly back and forth so that it kind of cycles through colors as well. So much you can do. So if you want to export it, come over here, press share, and then come down here to the bottom where we have our share layers. This will share animations as well. So you can share it as an animated GIF, which is just a GIF file that you can share on Giphy or anywhere on the web. Or you can save it as an animated MP4, which will save it as an actual video file. And it might be like 1 second long or 2 seconds long. And in that case, you'd have to import it into a video editing software and just duplicate it over and over and over and over, and then maybe export a 30-second clip of it that's been duplicated. Or if you want to export it as a transparent video file, you can export it as an animated HEVC. And what that will do is allow you to import it into a video and have your heart just bouncing over the video with no background. That's very cool as well. So if you want to do transparent video file, make sure to turn off your background layer. If you're exporting it as a GIF or a GIF, whatever you call it, you can export it just like this and just choose per frame color palette or alpha threshold. This is how you can turn off the background. But of course, you have to turn off the background over here. Then you can export it. It's an animated GIF. And this alpha threshold just lets you know how much, like how intense you want the transparencies to be. Since our drawing is perfectly opaque, there's no transparencies, the alpha threshold won't do anything. But if you did use like different textures that have different transparencies, you can adjust this to try to fine tune it for export. You can turn off transparent background if you want and have it export with a white or black background. And then you could also adjust your frames per second depending on how fast you want your heart to to bounce. Web Ready will export it very tinily, but you might as well just go with max resolution because this is not that large of a file. It's only 24 megabytes. So up at the top where it says untitled artwork, you can see how large the export will be. So Web Ready exports it at 1 megabyte. Max resolution would be 24. I don't think that's very big. Most programs can take 24 megabytes. Totally fine. So once you have it there, you can press export. And boom, we're done. Save the image. You come over into your Photos app. And there's your animation. Bada boom, bada bing. So we went through all the steps. Step 1 was to create the still image. That shows obviously super blurry here because iOS likes to stretch it out for your screen. But if you were to pinch it and shrink it all the way down to 20 pixels, it would be perfectly clear. And you can see my first draft over here. This is how it looked before I re-exported it. And then this is how it looked after. The animation's a little choppy because this is a larger file. And that's how we got to here. So again, step 1, we created the pixel heart in a small canvas. Step 2, we resized the pixel canvas to 2000 pixels, and we used nearest neighbor to keep the pixel rigidity. Step 3, we created the animation by using a guide that we basically just cut in half, and then in half again and a half again to create the guide. And then step 4 was dragging our pixel heart up and down that grid and setting the animation style to ping pong. And then finally, the last step, what we did was we added a little bit of shine, we smushed the outer frames, and we stretched out the middle frame to smooth the animation and give it some character. And then we exported. So I hope you enjoyed. I will be saving this video, and if it doesn't save immediately on the app, I have it recorded as well, so I can clip it out and re-upload it back to Visual Tribe. There is a slight chance that I might upload this to YouTube because it does go along with the free Pixel Boy brush pack. Either way, I hope you enjoyed. If you had a good time, make sure to drop a comment whenever I post this. And I can't wait to see your version of this. You can do this not only with hearts, but you can do any 8-bit you can think. You can create little sprites, little characters, different types of animations. You can even take the things that you learned on this and create way different animations. They don't even have to be with the pixel brush. So this is just a fun little thing that I cooked up, and I thought you all might enjoy it. So if you stuck around, thanks so much for giving me 48 minutes of your time. I really hope to see what you can create with this, and see you in Tribe. Thank you so much, and have a good weekend.